Welcome to the Explainer. Today, we're diving deep into the invisible social structures that secretly dictate our everyday behaviors, our successes, and yeah, even our failures. It turns out there's this hidden societal architecture guiding pretty much everything we do.
I mean, think about it for a second. Where do everyday phrases like role model, reference group, or self-fulfilling prophecy actually come from? We toss these terms around constantly, at work, over coffee, scrolling through the news. But most of us have no idea they didn't just organically pop into the English language. No, they all originated from the brilliant mind of one single thinker. And honestly, understanding his work, it's kind of like finally seeing the code behind the matrix of our society.
So here's our roadmap for today. We're going to cover the vocabulary of society, the mechanics behind chasing the American dream, the infamous red tape trap, the incredible power of expectations, and finally wrap up with his lasting legacy. Let's get right into it.
Part 1. The vocabulary of society. Building the middle range roadmap.
To really get the genius of Robert K. Merton, who, by the way, went from being a tailor's son in South Philly to an absolute founding father of modern sociology, we have to look at what he rebelled against. Back at Harvard, his mentor, Talcott Parsons, was all about this thing called grand theory. It was a massive, highly abstract framework trying to explain, well, literally everything about how society maintains order. But Merton, he totally broke away from that. He developed what he called middle-range theory. He wanted to focus on specific, testable aspects of social life that were actually grounded in observable, practical reality. No more abstract guesswork.
Because he focused on the practical stuff, Merton coined a vocabulary that seamlessly bridged the massive gap between dense academic sociology and our actual daily lives. Concepts like unintended consequences, reference group, role model, self-fulfilling prophecy, and role strain, these aren't just dry academic jargon. They're the literal terms we use to navigate our relationships, our careers, and our identities today.
Which brings us to Part 2, Chasing the American Dream, Strain Theory and the Pressure to Succeed.
One of Merton's absolutely fascinating contributions looks at what happens when society promises everyone success, but completely fails to give everyone the tools to reach it. Back in 1938, he published his strain theory, basically stating, society puts pressure on individuals to achieve socially accepted goals, even though they lack the means to do so. The crucial point here is that friction. American culture heavily glorifies the end goal of financial success, the whole American dream, right? But it only really endorses a limited number of legitimate ways to get there, like higher education or grinding up the corporate ladder. So what happens when you just don't have the resources to access those legitimate paths?
Well, Merton mapped out exactly how we adapt to that intense structural strain. He identified 5 modes of adaptation, and it is fascinating. The conformist, well, they accept both the goal of wealth and the hard work required. Simple enough. But look at the innovationist. They want the wealth, but they totally reject the traditional means. This is your white-collar criminal or a drug dealer. Then you've got the ritualist. Think of an underpaid but super dedicated secretary. They've abandoned the grand dream of wealth, but they strictly follow the rules anyway. Retreatists just reject the whole shebang, both the goals and the means, often falling into severe substance abuse or permanent homelessness. And finally, rebellion. These folks completely reject society's goals and means and actually try to replace them, like extremist groups or cult members. It's an incredibly powerful way to see how restricted opportunities literally force different systemic behaviors.
Okay, moving on to Part 3, the red tape trap, the dysfunctions of bureaucracy.
So, while strain theory handles the big, macro-level societal pressures, Merton was just as obsessed with the microdynamics of the workplace. Specifically, why do organizations that are supposedly designed purely for efficiency so often become maddeningly inefficient? To figure this out, he made a brilliant distinction between intended and actual outcomes. Manifest functions are the conscious, intended goals, like a hospital efficiently curing patients. But then you have latent functions. These are the totally unintended, unacknowledged consequences that pop up in practice, like, say, a super rigid system causing massive employee disengagement.
And this leads us to kind of a palate cleanser of an observation from Merton. He noted that bureaucracies create a particular kind of personality that is characterized by conformity and inflexibility, which works against the manifest goals of the bureaucratic organization. Basically, he realized the very structure of a bureaucracy literally changes the personality of the people working inside of it.
Because bureaucrats are heavily encouraged to just follow standardized procedures, eventually the rules become an end in themselves rather than a means to an end. Boom! This is exactly where we get the dreaded red tape.
Imagine a government official doing everything strictly by the book, totally alienating a client who desperately needs help, and constantly passing the buck because they feel they have absolutely no authority to take initiative. That rigid adherence to the rules completely defeats the organization's original purpose. Let's shift gears and see how this builds into Part 4, the power of expectations, decoding the self-fulfilling prophecy.
Now, in 1948, Merton introduced a concept showing how our invisible beliefs literally manifest into physical, real-world outcomes. He defined the self-fulfilling prophecy as a false definition of a situation evoking a new behavior which makes the originally false conception come true. It's this wild phenomenon where your expectation about a person or an event actually changes your behavior, and then that behavior guarantees the outcome you expected. This single idea plays a massive role in things like classroom performance, cultural stereotypes, and even the medical placebo effect, where people heal simply because they genuinely believe a sugar pill is real medicine.
It basically operates in this cyclical three-step sequence. First, a false prediction or belief is formed. Second, that belief causes a change in the person's behavior. And third, that altered behavior directly forces the original false prediction to become reality. Let's look at a classic, highly relatable example so you can see exactly how this plays out.
Meet Jonathan. So Jonathan is getting ready for a party, but he is completely convinced he's too shy and the party is going to be terrible. Right there, that's step one, the false prediction. Now, because he believes this, when he arrives, he makes literally zero effort to talk to anyone and just isolates himself in the corner. That's step two, the change in behavior. And what happens? Well, he goes home having spoken to no one and having had an absolutely terrible time. Step three, the prophecy is fulfilled. His own negative expectation directly guaranteed the exact negative outcome he was so afraid of.
But here's the kicker. This isn't just about our own internal anxiety. It deeply affects how we treat and elevate others. Take a look at this incredible 1968 study by psychologists Rosenthal and Jacobson. They randomly selected students and falsely told the teachers that these specific kids were intellectual bloomers, destined for a massive leap in intelligence. And the teachers believed this false prediction. Because they believed it, they unconsciously changed their behavior, giving these specific kids bigger challenges and better feedback. And at the end of the year, those completely random students actually achieved significantly higher IQ and reading scores. The teacher's positive expectations literally elevated the student's intelligence. It's just mind-blowing.
Which brings us to our final section, Part 5, Merton's lasting legacy, the enduring relevance of middle-range theory.
We've covered a ton of ground today, and it's pretty clear that Merton's theories form a vital roadmap for diagnosing the flaws in our society right now. Looking at his historical arc, from a tailor's son born in Philly in 1910 to publishing strain theory in the 30s to receiving the National Medal of Science in 1994, his impact is just astonishing. Robert K. Merton didn't just study society from some ivory tower. He fundamentally gave us the language to understand our place within it. He gave us the tools to see why we feel so pressured to succeed, why the line at the DMV is so soul-crushing, and why our own beliefs can actually alter our physical reality. So I want to leave you with a final, provocative thought. Ask yourself, which of Merton's invisible structures is shaping your life right now? Are you feeling the heavy pressure of societal strain? Are you caught up in endless bureaucratic red tape at your job? Or maybe, are you currently living out a self-fulfilling prophecy, for better or worse? Once you learn to actually see these invisible forces, you can finally start to navigate them. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and remember, keep questioning the structures around you.